While Donald threatens to send the National Guard to cities like Chicago and New Orleans, the military occupations he's already implemented in U.S. cities are proving to be huge failures and massive expenditures. First off, it was just announced that the National Guard's occupation of Washington, D.C. has been extended through December, which is weird because I thought Donald just said a couple of days ago that the problem of crime in Washington, D.C. has been permanently solved by him. NBC4 Washington has the story. Take a look.
Let's start with the National Guard, because it looks like the deployment of the D.C. National Guard to patrol city streets will continue into December. Now, an official with the National Guard tells the Associated Press that orders have been extended, an indication that the 950 D.C. National Guard soldiers will not be sent home in the near future. Now, as for the federal oversight of the D.C. Police Department, an extension of the crime emergency declaration would have to be approved by Congress, and that has not happened.
This is absurd. This is terrible news for the American taxpayer because the deployment of these National Guard troops is extraordinarily expensive. It's also disastrous for National Guard soldiers who signed up to help their fellow Americans, not police them at tourist sites or pick up trash. A piece co-written by CNN's Isabel Korshudian reports that morale among the soldiers Donald has deployed to D.C. is at an all-time low. The reason? They have no clear mission. There is nothing really for them to accomplish. These are people who were not trained in law enforcement. They don't want to be walking around among their fellow citizens armed. Donald sent them there as an intimidation tactic to anybody who would dare stand up to him. And, of course, it was a failed attempt for him to appear tough. The article describes soldiers, most of whom came from out of state, as feeling taken advantage of. After all, they have left behind their families and their day jobs to go do something that has no value to them or the people they signed up to serve. The piece elaborates on this malaise, saying, quote, while domestic missions typically have National Guard troops responding to crises like hurricanes or wildfires, in D.C., much of their work has involved more mundane tasks, patrolling popular tourist destinations and assisting with so-called beautification projects, including picking up trash, raking leaves, and laying mulch, unquote, none of which, as far as I'm aware, has absolutely anything to do with stopping crime or keeping Americans safe. The article adds that some soldiers have even embraced the label National Gardeners. This, of course, is lampooning the fact that their mission has blurred the line between policing, political symbolism, and routine landscaping. And here's a fact worth keeping in mind. This deployment, this pointless deployment, costs about $1 million per day, with expenses mounting for hotels, food contracts, and even tent cities to house guardsmen. Donald is blowing $1 million of American taxpayers' money every day to have the National Guard essentially do community service. Here's another fact, not a fun one at all. It would cost 25% of that budget to find housing for every single homeless person in Washington, D.C. Using our members of the military as pawns in his hostile takeover of democratic cities, which is both illegal, unconstitutional, and completely amoral, is an act of extreme disrespect to people who signed up to serve this country. But we know that Donald doesn't respect our troops. He doesn't respect their time. He doesn't respect their well-being, and he has no concerns whatsoever about their safety. The cities being occupied are finally starting to push back. This week, Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser said in no uncertain terms that the National Guard presence in her city is not wanted. She was correcting an earlier report that implied she appreciated the federal intervention. Take a look at the mayor's statement.
The only way it can be extended legally is by the Congress. So I want the message to be clear to the Congress. We have a framework to request or use federal resources in our city. We don't need a presidential emergency. Yep. Sure.
That's pretty strong language.
It's accurate.
The Washington Post intentionally had a misleading headline.
It was misleading.
Can you expand on that? I mean,
I've said all I need to say, Mark. If they say that we were issued a statement that was welcoming, that is false.
Yes, Washington Post, thank you for your misleading headlines. DC's Attorney General Brian Traub is going one step further. CNN's Gabe Cohen reports that the DC AG is suing the Trump regime, alleging it violated the Constitution and federal law by deploying thousands of National Guard troops into the city without local consent. And Traub made it clear that this case is about more than just what's happening in our capital. His statement read in part, quote, "Deploying the National Guard to engage in law enforcement is not only unnecessary and unwanted, but it is also dangerous and harmful to the district and its residents. It's DC today, but could be any other city tomorrow. We filed this action to put an end to this illegal federal overreach," unquote. So we know that the Republicans in Congress are going to do nothing. We can almost guarantee that if Congress's approval of this continuing occupation of our capital city is asked for, it will be given. That is how craven these people are. But where is Democratic leadership here? Why is it that we have to continue to rely on local, city, and state leaders to stand up to Donald? Why are congressional Democrats not giving press conferences every single day to talk about the dangerous incursions into American cities and our civil liberties? Luckily, the courts are continuing to do their part. Federal grand juries in Washington have been rejecting indictments brought by Donald's DOJ in relation to his DC military occupation. CBS News' Scott MacFarlane reports that grand juries have declined to indict at least 4 such defendants this week. The piece quotes former federal prosecutor Brendan Ballou as saying, quote, "This is not the fault of career prosecutors, but rather the office's fault. Again and again, to secure indictments suggests that the administration has absolutely destroyed its credibility with jurors," unquote. It's probably an indication, too, that their cases are weak and should never have been brought. A number of these cases have fallen under the jurisdiction of Donald's DC U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro. As we've discussed previously, one of the indictments Pirro failed to secure was against a DC man who, in a moment captured on camera, seemed to throw a sandwich at a federal officer. Well, the Daily Beast recently reported that in response to this prosecutorial setback, an unidentified artist has posted satirical graffiti around Washington depicting Pirro and other members of the Trump regime. I continue to believe that it is wrong to lob any kind of sandwich at a law enforcement agent. I do. I think it's wrong, and it's probably dangerous. However, I fully support drawing pictures of people lobbing heroes, grinders, subs, or whatever you call them at people like Jeanine Pirro and Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. Good job, guys. Keep it up. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.